Ben Shapiro wasn't born into poverty, but he wasn't born into immense wealth either. What he did inherit, though, was something arguably more powerful: razor-sharp intelligence and an almost unnatural reservoir of energy. These two ingredients, more than anything else, would become the foundation of a media empire worth hundreds of millions. When people talk about his wealth, they often point to the Daily Wire and say, "He built that." But to truly understand how Ben Shapiro made his millions, you have to rewind decades before the billion-dollar valuations and the podcasts that dominate the airwaves, to a child who skipped grades, devoured books, and was already solving problems most adults couldn't wrap their heads around. By the time most kids were thinking about prom, Shapiro had entered university at just 16. While teenagers were still figuring out who they were, he was already writing nationally syndicated political columns at 17. At 20, he had published 2 books. By his mid-20s, he was married with children, juggling multiple jobs, and pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. This wasn't accidental. It wasn't luck. It was the product of relentless, obsessive work, powered by that unique combination of high intelligence and almost superhuman stamina. For the record, we are not siding with anyone's political views. A person's ability to achieve financial goals or influential positions does not make their opinions right or wrong. It simply highlights the effort and work it took to reach that position, which is the truly interesting point. Most people need 9 hours of sleep to function. He thrived on far less. Where others burned out, he pushed through. While others clocked out, he clocked in. It's not a story most people can replicate, and that's exactly what makes it both fascinating and a little unsettling. Energy is the invisible currency of wealth. If you don't have it, you can't build anything outside your day job. Shapiro's life was structured around squeezing every drop of productivity out of every single day. Waking up at 5 a.m., working through the day, coming home and working again, week after week, year after year, with barely a vacation in sight. This intensity wasn't just about personal discipline, it was a competitive advantage. Most people were sleeping, he was building. Most were consuming, he was creating. And when the digital media landscape shifted, when podcasts, alternative news sites, and independent creators began carving their own spaces outside traditional networks, Shapiro wasn't just ready, he was already running. But intelligence and energy alone don't guarantee wealth. What made Shapiro different was how strategically he channeled those traits. After graduating from Harvard Law School, again, summa cum laude, he stepped into a high-paying legal career. But even then, the job was just one layer of his larger plan. Law wasn't the end game, it was fuel. He moved fast through cases that took others hours. He earned big, and then he took that money, that reputation, that intellectual edge, and began building a platform. First, he made a name for himself through his books and his unapologetic, rapid-fire debating style. He positioned himself not just as a commentator, but as a cultural lightning rod, someone who could trigger strong reactions on both sides. That polarizing quality, whether loved or hated, is marketing gold in the digital age. Then came the move that would change everything: the Daily Wire. Founded in 2015 with filmmaker Jeremy Boring and seed money from billionaire brothers Dan and Ferris Wilks, the Daily Wire started small, just another conservative outlet in a crowded landscape. But Shapiro's vision was bigger. He didn't just want to talk politics, he wanted to build a self-sustaining conservative ecosystem: media, entertainment, publishing, children's programming, podcasts, all under one roof. It was an ambitious strategy that mirrored what Disney and major Hollywood studios had done for decades, but from a completely different ideological angle. And it worked. By 2022, the Daily Wire was reportedly generating over $200 million in annual revenue. Its subscription service, Daily Wire Plus, drew over 1 million paying members, each shelling out between $12 and $20 per month. Shapiro wasn't just a face of the brand, he was the engine. His podcast, The Ben Shapiro Show, became one of the most downloaded political podcasts in the US, syndicated across more than 200 radio markets. Each of those layers, ads, subscriptions, syndication, poured more money into the machine. What's more, Shapiro diversified early. He didn't stop at podcasts and articles. He wrote 16 books, many of which became bestsellers. The royalties and advances from those alone formed a strong financial backbone. Public speaking became another income stream. Lucrative speaking engagements at universities and conferences where he could command upwards of $20,000 per appearance. Every aspect of his career fed into the next. The podcast sold the books. The books built the brand. The brand grew the company. The company expanded into new industries. It was a feedback loop of growth, each layer monetizing his audience in a new way. But beneath this structured empire building is something more personal and ideological. Shapiro's identity as a conservative Jew of Ashkenazi descent isn't just a footnote. It's integral to how he's built and presented himself. His family transitioned to Orthodox Judaism when he was 9, and his faith has been a cornerstone of his worldview ever since. He wears a yarmulke, observes Orthodox practices, and consistently weaves his religious beliefs into his commentary. It's both a cultural anchor and a branding choice. It sets him apart in a media landscape where identity often drives loyalty. His staunch support for Israel, his outspoken defense of Judeo-Christian values, and his criticisms of what he perceives as moral decay all resonate deeply with a segment of the American population that feels alienated by mainstream media. And when you give that audience not just commentary, but a full-fledged media network that aligns with their values, they show up. And they pay. Of course, none of this happened without controversy. In 2023, a contract dispute with fellow conservative personality Steven Crowder over a $50 million deal exploded into public view, exposing the business side of conservative media like never before. Crowder accused the Daily Wire of offering exploitative terms. Shapiro defended the contract as fair and necessary for profitability. It wasn't just a fight between two media figures. It was a rare glimpse behind the curtain of how big the stakes had become. Around the same time, internal clashes with figures like Candace Owens over issues such as Israel policy tested the company's cohesion. But even as these battles raged publicly, the Daily Wire continued to grow. Shapiro didn't back down. He doubled down. One of the most striking things about Shapiro's financial trajectory is how deliberately he's moved into industries traditionally dominated by his ideological opponents. In 2021, the Daily Wire entered the film industry, producing movies designed to counter what they saw as Hollywood's liberal bias. By 2023, they had launched Bentkey, a children's entertainment platform built as a conservative alternative to Disney, with a $100 million investment. They expanded into book publishing, bypassing traditional New York publishing houses. Bit by bit, Shapiro's empire began to mirror the structure of legacy media institutions, but with a completely different ideological core. And in doing so, he wasn't just making money. He was reshaping cultural consumption for millions of people. All of this naturally has made him both celebrated and despised. To his supporters, he's a brilliant entrepreneur who built a powerful media empire from scratch. Someone who proved that with intelligence, energy, and strategy, you can bypass the establishment and build your own. To his critics, he's a polarizing propagandist whose wealth is built on outrage and division. But regardless of where one stands politically, the numbers don't lie. An estimated net worth of around $50 million, a company valued at over $1 billion, a podcast that dominates charts, a publishing arm, a film studio, a streaming service, a children's network, all under his ideological umbrella. What's especially fascinating is that Shapiro's journey mirrors a larger truth about wealth in modern America. It often boils down to intelligence and energy. You can't fake either. If you're smart but exhausted, you might make it through low-effort ventures like affiliate marketing or SaaS. If you're energetic but not particularly sharp, you might build something scalable but simple, like a chain of restaurants or taxi services. If you're neither, the only real option is to lean on time, like real estate investing. But if you have both intelligence and energy, the ceiling disappears. You can solve complex problems faster than others, and you can keep working long after they've stopped. That's the terrain where billion-dollar companies are born. And Shapiro didn't just step onto that terrain. He sprinted across it. Look closer, though, and the story has a twist. For all his insistence on hard work being the key to wealth, Shapiro benefited from advantages that most people simply don't have. He grew up in a two-parent household. He had access to excellent education. His parents were involved in the entertainment industry. These factors don't negate his achievements, but they contextualize them. They reveal that his story isn't just about grit. It's about the intersection of raw ability, strategic decision-making, ideological clarity, and socioeconomic positioning. It's about recognizing a gap in the cultural landscape and filling it faster and more effectively than anyone else. When Shapiro sat down on the Iced Coffee podcast and explained how he built the Daily Wire from zero to a billion-dollar company in under a decade, it wasn't a step-by-step tutorial for the average person. It was a glimpse into how a very specific kind of person, hyper-intelligent, tireless, ideologically driven, can leverage modern media to build immense wealth. The average listener isn't going to replicate that by waking up earlier or writing a few blog posts, but they might come away understanding how wealth in the information age flows to those who can capture attention, build infrastructure around that attention, and scale it with relentless efficiency. And perhaps the most shocking truth is this: Shapiro didn't do anything that others couldn't theoretically do. He didn't invent a new technology. He didn't inherit billions. He didn't stumble into a lucky break. He identified a cultural niche, built a platform around it, monetized it in every conceivable way, and kept scaling. He did it with the cold precision of a lawyer, the energy of a startup founder, and the ideological clarity of a preacher. That combination is rare, but when it appears, it's explosive. Today, as the Daily Wire continues to grow, expanding deeper into entertainment, publishing, and beyond, Shapiro stands as one of the wealthiest and most influential figures in American political commentary. His journey isn't just about one man making millions. It's about how power, ideology, media, and money intertwine in the modern era. It's about how narratives are built, monetized, and scaled. And whether you admire him or loathe him, his story forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about who gets rich, why they get rich, and how the game is really played. Because the truth is, for all the public debates and fiery speeches, Shapiro's greatest argument has never been made at a podium. It's been made in boardrooms, spreadsheets, contracts, and business plans. It's the argument that ideology can be a business model, that attention can be industrialized, that culture can be monetized, and that intelligence and energy, when pointed in the right direction, can build empires. That's how Ben Shapiro made his millions. And whether the world likes it or not, it's working.